Hello everyone and welcome to my latest video, in which I'll be reviewing the latest film in the Beverly Hills Cop franchise, that being Beverly Hills Cop: Axel F. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So in terms of the story, there's not a lot that happens. The plot is fairly bare bones, and it's keeping with the franchise really. We see Eddie Murphy return as Axel Foley. At the beginning of the film, he's investigating a crime, I believe a hockey match, and he kind of uncovers all the crime that's happening, solves the crime. But that particular scene doesn't really lead into the rest of the film. And in terms of the story itself, it really doesn't have a lot going for it. It involves Axel Foley's daughter investigating a case, and it involves Axel Foley returning back to Beverly Hills to kind of help his daughter solve the case. But really, that's pretty much it in terms of the plot. There's not a lot that really happens. We do see old characters return, as I'll discuss shortly, with Taggart and Billy Rosewood as well as Joseph Gordon-Levitt being a newcomer to the franchise. But yeah, as I said, there's not much really to discuss in terms of the story. As I said, it's kind of keeping with the franchise formula. You know, you see Eddie Murphy being dragged back to Beverly Hills to investigate a crime, has the usual kind of quips and comedy they expect at this point. But yeah, not really much to discuss. It's not kind of a multi-layered plot. So if you're going into the film with that expectation, then definitely avoid that film at all costs. In terms of the characters and also the acting, in addition, it's pretty good generally across the board. Eddie Murphy, who I believe is in his 60s now, does a fairly good job in reprising his role as Axel Foley. He has the kind of usual quippy one-liners and doesn't have the comedic laugh anymore, that signature laugh that we're familiar with. But he does his best with kind of the material that he has. It's fairly bare bones. We do see a bit of development with his character. Obviously, now his daughter's in the fold. We see kind of the reconciliation, if you like, between Axel Foley and his daughter as kind of the film progresses. But on the whole, it's kind of the standard Eddie Murphy role that we've come to expect. As I said before, the one-liners, the signature smile that he does have in this film. But yeah, Eddie Murphy does a really good job. In terms of certainly the returning members, you've got Billy Rosewood and also Taggart as well. They don't have a massive role in the film. The role is kind of fairly reduced. And so in that respect, we don't really see the chemistry that we had from those previous films. Rosewood and Taggart and also Axel Foley, they had a good little bit of camaraderie in those early films, which is unfortunately missing in this film. And it would have been nice to have a bit more of that. I appreciate, this is another edition in the franchise, so you need those newcomers to kind of mix in with the old cast as well. But yeah, when they do come on screen, for example, like Judge Reinhold when he comes back, they kind of slip into the roles fairly easily. But I mean, it's not exactly heavy lifting in terms of the roles they played previously. So yeah, they're all pretty solid across the board. And in terms of obviously the villain, you've got Kevin Bacon, who does a solid job. Again, he's not going to be winning Oscars or anything like that with his performance, but does a pretty solid job. Fairly menacing. And again, the script doesn't do a lot for his character in terms of his backstory, other than the fact that he was a crop cop, or is a crop cop, working in Beverly Hills. And it's obviously a central part of the plot. But apart from that, we don't really learn much about his character. And so, Kevin Bacon's relying on kind of his menacing body language and kind of those one-liners and that kind of thing to kind of really sell his performance, as it were. But he's pretty good. And also the newcomer, Eddie Murphy's daughter, well, the actor that plays Eddie Murphy's daughter, she's really good as well. But yeah, I can't really fault the cast in terms of their performances. But yeah, the script doesn't really do a lot of favors for them, either in terms of fleshing out their roles or giving them a lot to do. So they do the best with the material that they're given. The action is not as good as the previous entries, I'll be brutally honest. The previous entries were really good at, framing the action, and I feel like kind of those, action films of that era, certainly of the 80s and the 90s, they frame action scenes in a certain way. You had cuts and, moving from one set piece to another, but it wasn't necessarily jarring. You always had a sense of focus and a sense of where things were on screen. Whereas I feel like this action film is in kind of keeping with modern films in the sense where you have those quick cuts between action beats, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to follow. It's not too bad in this film, but there are definitely moments where, the action's kind of keen to kind of move on very quickly. And you can tell a lot of it is practically done. You see Eddie Murphy, it looks like he's driving a truck, so unless it's a stuntman doing a really good job. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame because I've seen some of the behind the scenes of this film, and you can tell they're trying to keep it in line with the franchise before in terms of, that practicality, being on set and being on location, which is obviously refreshing, especially in an era where most things, certainly these blockbuster films, are full of CGI and spectacle and that kind of thing. So it's nice to have a movie where It respects the audience intelligence to kind of put yourself in the moment, as I said before, whether it's on location or on set. It just would have been a bit more nice if the action was framed with a bit more clarity. I say it's somewhat of a minor complaint. I mean, it's fairly serviceable, the action. You know what's going on for the most part, but yeah, it just would have been nice if there was a bit more kind of focus as to, the framing of the action, as it were. So overall, I'm going to give Beverly Hills Cop Axel F a 6 out of 10. The reason for that, the film is generally serviceable in terms of, the story, the characters, and the action. It doesn't do anything spectacular. As I said before, it has the classic kind of franchise stereotypes, if you can call it, or tropes. You've got kind of the funny comedic elements that, we're used to, but also kind of those big action set pieces as well. But yeah, on the whole, it's, this is not going to be a revolution of the franchise. It's not going to, kickstart. I mean, to be fair, I've read in there that they're doing another Beverly Hills Cop. Well, reportedly anyway. So if it's anything like this, probably going to land on Netflix anyway. So I probably will have to watch it just because of the fact, you're not paying cinema prices, as it were. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a film that doesn't really need to exist, if I'm being brutally honest. It's a decent film, and look, if you're not familiar with the franchise, it's not necessarily you have to watch the previous films to appreciate this film per se. If you're kind of a movie kind of fanatic and you want to do that, then obviously by all means go ahead and do that. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple of Easter eggs here and there, but it's not like a film that's, heavily reliant on nostalgia per se. As I said, obviously you got the returning cast members and that kind of thing, but it's not necessarily, plot points from the previous films aren't used in this film. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, on the whole, it's a solid film. Probably won't watch it again if I'm being honest. But yeah, by all means check it out. It's a good couple of hours to kind of get rid of, I suppose, in your day if you've got nothing to do on a weekend, for example, or during the weekday. So check it out, I suppose. But yeah, I wouldn't be kind of rushing to watch this back anytime soon. Love to hear your thoughts down below in terms of whether you liked the film, whether you didn't. Keen to know what you think of this latest entry in the Beverly Hills franchise. So do let me know in the comment section down below. But thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.